In this video, I'll show you how to use pivot tables on your Airbnb data. So recall in a previous video, I showed you how to clean and filter your data set. So as a refresher, if I click on the data here and turn on the filter, these filters here have a drop down and it'll show you all the different data points for each of our variables. If you haven't watched the cleaning and filtering video yet, make sure to do so. So here what I actually want to do is work in pivot tables to get a better feel on this city of Boston. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is starting at column F at neighborhood, I'm going to go ahead and select all the way across to the right until I get to the end of my data. So it's quite a few variables I've just highlighted, and make sure you click on the letters above, not in the middle here. Then I'm going to go to Insert tab up here, and there's a pivot table option. I'll go ahead and click OK. And so for our pivot table now, we've got like a shell right here on the left, and over here on the right, we have the pivot table fields with the columns or the variables that we highlighted, and some quadrants right here that will help you organize your data. So for instance, I'm going to click on Neighborhood Cleansed, and it automatically dropped it down to rows here. But if for some reason it didn't go there, you can always just drag and drop it into the rows. Now for this box right here, when it says rows, just think of this as what we want to look at or organize by on the left hand side. So you can see here we now have rows of all the different neighborhoods in Boston. What I also want to do is take that neighborhood cleansed, and I'm going to drop it into values. This quadrant here where it says values, it will count if it's categorical data, so think nominal or ordinal. And if it is a ratio or interval data point, you can do some statistical analyses with it. So here now I can see the different neighborhoods and how many Airbnb listings are available by neighborhood. And if I want to sort this, I can right click on any of the numbers here, and there's a sort option, and I want to sort largest to smallest. Or I can just leave it as is, because right now it's in alphabetical order. But if you sort it, it's helpful because then perhaps you want to focus on like the top neighborhoods, for instance. Or if you have a specific neighborhood you want to study for a particular purpose, you can. For instance, here I've got Fenway, and I might study that neighborhood because I'm interested in baseball and the stadium nearby. So let me go ahead and undo that real quick. So we're going to leave it back at our rows by neighborhood and the count. Now there's all these other variables, and so for instance, this property type, if I drag and drop it into rows, I can actually now see the different property types and their count for each of our neighborhoods. So this can give me an idea of what's in there. I might narrow down to certain types of property types. And so you can use pivot tables to help do the counting, as well as do a little bit of math to help you out. So an example of how to do some of that math is price. This is ratio data, meaning it has a true zero. You could have a zero price for a rental. And I'm going to take this and drag and drop it into the values box here on the right. And you'll notice when I dragged and dropped there, Excel's default is to count the variable I just dropped in. The count of price is not very helpful because, as you can see, it's the same as the count of the neighborhood cleansed. And what I'd rather do is find the average. So if I go to the count of price right here and double click on it, I can get the average price for my neighborhoods by the property type. And because this is money, what I want to do is highlight this column C and click on the dollar sign right here, just so it's easier to see and it doesn't have all the decimals. So this will give me an idea of the price points by property type in our different neighborhoods for Boston, for instance. So I recommend playing around with pivot tables. This is a really great tool for business people to have. It speeds up the time of having to count, organize, analyze data through this tool. And you just have to play around dragging and dropping the different variables in different places. For instance, up here under filter, I can actually filter, let's say by room type. So I'm going to take room type and drag it into filters here. And the filter gets put up right here up at the top. I'm going to highlight that in yellow so you can see. Clicking on the drop down, here were the different room types. And right now, all room types are available. let's say I'm only interested in Airbnbs where the entire home or apartment is available. So I can click on that and filter it and hit OK. And so now all of my data here will update and only look at Airbnb listings where you can rent the entire home or apartment. And again, I gotta make this pretty with my $sign. It will revert back every time I mess with the pivot table. And so if you have any questions on pivot tables, just let me know.